So can we deal with a 969-year-old man? Well, so there's a lot here. There's a lot to unpack, okay? There's sort of the biblical side, there's the science side, sort of the archaeology side. One just sort of glaring thing that we have to notice is that we don't have any evidence of anyone who ever lived that long. We just don't have it. Okay.
Yep.
If anything, based on our archaeological studies that we've done, ancient people in general seemed to live shorter, right? And actually had shorter lifespans, certainly not longer.
Yes, this longevity in Genesis is really interesting, so I think it needs to be understood right. And the way I see it is like this. When God made Adam and Eve, they were at what we would call age 12, just on the brink of age 13. In fact, if you looked at Adam, you'd say, here's a boy whose 13th birthday is tomorrow. That's right at the age he was at, okay? They were suspended in time right at that moment. They were not aging at all. And after the fall, they lost this, but it tapered down to normal mortality over a period of time. It's a strange phenomenon, and it has to do with aging, and it's only the Edenic people, and this will become real important. I'll bring it up again toward the end of the video.
So obviously, we don't have evidence that people lived this long, but we also might not expect to have evidence of people who lived this long. For example, if we take the biblical timeline seriously, we seem to have a drastic and pretty fast-moving cutoff of these ages after the flood, right?
Yeah, that's a real important phenomenon to see, that this longevity was cut off at the flood and quickly tapered down. And most of these long-aged men were killed in the flood. And it's important to understand that this is the Edenic lineage. Okay? That's why I put in red twice on this drawing the following note. Supernatural longevity inherited by Edenic descendants only. Contemporaneous non-Edenic lifespans typical of moderns. See what I'm saying? The non-Edenic people living alongside the Edenic people had typical lifespans. Yeah, so I put that note on here twice just to make sure people see it and think about it and think about what it answers. All the fossil men we dig up are just a normal mortality. All the animals we dig up are of normal mortality. In the unearthed creationism with their supernatural immortal earth falling into corruption, is it only the humankind that tapered down to a normal mortality? Would not the animal kingdom follow the same pattern? Why would the animals instantly drop to normal mortality? We should be finding long-aged animals in the fossil record as well, if that view is right. And we don't. Now, I'm not here to challenge the unearthed creationists. Just here to help people think these things out and see answers.
what's interesting is when you see people who make an argument for these inflated ages, you typically get two responses. One is that it's some kind of ancient number cipher of some sort. And the other is, well, look at the comparison. The closest comparison we have in ancient literature to this is the Sumerian king lists. Okay. Well, let's just dispense with those very quickly. No, okay, number one, the number cipher. We kind of already talked about this. If there is some sort of ancient number cipher, we don't have one from the ancient world. There's some that come close, but we don't have one from the ancient world that directly maps to this. And even if we did, we don't have any way to know what it means.
Well, I would agree, and I follow the longevity for what it would seem to mean. However, keep an open mind, because I haven't seen a cipher that makes good sense, but I keep an open mind to it. We'll see what people can come up with.
Okay, the second one, along those same lines, is they'll say, okay, well, we have these ancient king lists, like the ancient Sumerians kept these lists of their kings, and they have hugely inflated numbers. And again, it was for they had certain purposes for it. Okay, well, a couple things here. Number one, yeah, they had inflated numbers. Their numbers were like 33,000, right?
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
Huge difference between 432, right, or whatever, and 33,000, right? Can we just admit that, number one? Okay.
Yeah, in the king list, we have these extreme ages. 8 kings reigning 241,200 years. And then the flood swept thereover. After the flood had swept thereover, when the kingship was lowered from heaven, the kingship was in Kish. In Kish, the tablet is damaged right here. In Kish, this king became king and reigned 1,200 years. Now that's still a big number, but you can see the tremendous drop. Prior to the flood, big numbers, and then a tremendous drop. I would say that pattern is seen in Genesis as well.
Ages of the patriarchs are a challenge for old age views. And so most often you will hear people who want to affirm an old age view take issue with these ages, especially because they accept evolutionary history, which in general is, would negate the fact that we've ever had a human being live that long on Earth.
Well, we've never found one, And there's a few problems here. Now, if you understand correctly, you realize that only the Edenic people possessed this longevity. When we dig up fossil men, they're never these old ages. Have you ever heard Hugh Ross give his explanation of that?
When you look at the genealogies in Genesis 5 and 11, it's mentioning the very few individuals that did not get murdered by their fellow man. And so they were the lucky ones that died of natural causes. They lived to be 800 or 900, but the average lifespan was more like 30 or 40 years because murder was totally out of control. Just to explain the lack of archaeological evidence for people living before the days of Noah means that the human population had to be really low. And given their capability for reproduction at that time, living 800 or 900 years, it means that the murder rate had to be above 95%.
You don't believe that, do you? So there has to be a better answer, and there is. The chances of us finding one of these extremely old Edenic people is exceedingly small. And all the men we find that are typically like 30 years old, you'll find a 35-year-old, stuff like this. This is just the typical find because we're not finding Edenic people.